Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, I guess. I want to take you on a little journey. The journey started about 2 years ago, and very close to 2 years ago, and has recently come to an end. So I just want to take you through the steps. All the stuff I'm going to say to you is available online, several different websites. The tough part is actually navigating through all of their government websites, and those are not always anything involving the government. It's not always easy to navigate, and a lot of people use services and businesses that kind of specialize in this, and if that's something you can afford and you can do, they certainly know what they're doing. They do it for a lot of people, or if you're somebody like me and you just like to see if you can do it yourself, because it does cost enough money to for these visas, U.S. visas, to warrant trying to save a little bit on the processing side of things. I'm one of those people. I like to try to see if I can figure it out, get through the steps, and it is stressful at times, and it's frustrating sometimes. But there is satisfaction on the other end if you are successful. I'm just going to kind of take you through the steps of what it was we did to secure my wife and my stepson visas for the United States. Little backstory: Jen and I dated for 5 years, I guess, before we actually got married. 2021, January, we married. And in February that year, I was able to actually come into the country as a spouse. We immediately began working on a 13A visa for me as a spouse here in the Philippines. And we kind of prioritized that to begin with. And then once that was secured, once I got the probationary status on the 13A for the Philippines, we began the process of trying to secure a visa for my wife and stepson. I began this in August of 2021. So from February till about July, we had to deal with getting myself a visa for the Philippines, a permanent visa. And then we began the process for Jen and Genesis. So all that began in August. And of course, you start the process at the USCIS website, and that stands for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. Easy to Google, find the website. It's actually not a bad website. I've seen worse government websites. On that website, there's a form, and it's called an I-130. And again, this is for petitioning. It's called a petition for alien relative. So basically, I'm the petitioner as the U.S. citizen, and I'm asking the U.S. government to issue a visa, an immigrant visa, to my wife and to my stepson as my wife and stepson. So there are lots of different categories of immigrant visas. This one, of course, is for a spouse and for a stepson. So I started the process 10 August of 2021. By the 1st of September, I had actually completed everything that they needed, uploading what they asked for, and there are things that you have to upload. There's an extensive form you have to fill out. What this I-130 is going to do is it's going to establish that the person that you are petitioning for is eligible for this petition. It doesn't actually award you any kind of immigration benefit. So I want to be clear on that. This is the very first step in that process. Some of the things that I had to upload for this particular phase or step were birth certificates for both Jen and Genesis, marriage certificates. Hold on, another motorcycle. This is probably not the best place to to video for my vlog, but it's cool because I'm under one of my mango trees. You know what? I'm going to relocate. Hold on. Okay, new location. I came on down here to my little mango grove and got in my hammock. I don't think I've ever vlogged from here. So, I had to upload some things to prove my marriage, my relationship to my stepson, that type of thing. So that's actually the costliest part. Of course, it all adds up, but the costliest part of this I-130 petitioning process. It is $535 for each person. Crazy. But so $1,070 US dollars I had to pay, of course, for them to even accept the application. At that point, USCIS accepted my application, notified me via email that it was accepted. And then we go all the way to July of the next year. So nothing, crickets. from 1 September, when USCIS accepted my petition, to 23 July 2022. So almost a full year, just for that step. And that on 23 July 2022, that's when I actually was notified by the NVC, National Visa Center is what that stands for. It's actually part of the U.S. Department of State website. That website is more commonly known as SEAC. You probably, if you're in this process, you've probably heard some vlogger or some person mention the word SEAC. And all that is short for Consular Electronic Application System. I abbreviated some of my notes, so my handwriting's horrible. So that's what that SEAC stands for, Consular Electronic Application Center. So they notified me via email on the 23rd of July 2022 that my application with USCIS was approved, again giving me absolutely no benefit other than it's still in the process, is really all that means. So don't get yourself too excited when you get that, because you still have quite a journey. I did think that at that point maybe things were going to move very quickly, and boy was I wrong. You know, and I'm hoping, I hope for any of you guys that are going to start this process soon, it's my hope for you that things have gotten back to a good place, whatever that means for government agencies. But you know, this was COVID time, and people were not working in their offices. Government offices were shut down. I think they were probably still getting their paychecks, but nobody was working. You know, I don't know what you can do from home with this kind of stuff. I don't know if they completely stopped the processing or if it just slowed to a snail's crawl, but I don't think anybody was working too hard at that point. Yeah, especially here in the Philippines. You know, and my wife says I say too much, and so she's going to probably edit all those out. I'm so glad she can do that, because I don't mean to do that. At that point, when I was notified by NVC that USCIS had approved it and it was now in their hands, I was able to go to the U.S. Department of State website, SEAC, and then start the process with them. There's the one main form that you have to complete online, and I meant to mention the USCIS. I failed to mention this. You can file that paper-based, or you can do it electronically. I happen to believe that electronically has got to be faster, but honestly, there's really no fast when it comes to this process. I don't know, but the paper-based just kind of scares me, especially if I were doing it from the Philippines, which I had already made a decision that I would move here until my wife had a visa and was able to come to the U.S. I was so tired of waiting. You know, I had been locked out by the Philippine government because we weren't married, and even then, for the longest, they wouldn't let spouses in. They finally started doing that, and that's when I kind of made my decision. I was already retired, that I would just come over here and stay with her until we were able to get her through this visa process. But I would imagine most people petition while they're in the United States. So the electronic version to me was really the only option. Doing it via paper through field post or any other means just sounded too iffy to me. So when I did the USCIS, the first part of this process, I filed it online, and you do it by your location. So my home of record is in Texas. So I went to the Dallas USCIS Processing Center. So that's actually where my initial application was routed to. So depending on where you live, yours will route through whatever the closest USCIS office, and that's the I-130 petition I'm talking about. So fast forward again to MVC, a year later, they have my application, and you start a whole nother process. And this form is also on their website. It's called the DS-260. I actually began working on that immediately once I was notified in July of 2022, and it took me a couple weeks to get it all, everything, the form filled out. It's a pretty lengthy form, and it's again a DS-260. That's an online immigrant visa and alien registration application. That's what that form is called, a DS-260. The different sections of the form, there's a section on the applicant's personal information. So I had to fill out a lot of information on Jen, and you got to do it for both. So I had to do it for Jen, and I had to do it for Genesis. Then I had also address and contact information for them. I had a whole section on family information for her and for Genesis, and then previous travel in the U.S., which that was a short section because, you know, she was never allowed to travel in the U.S. So that one didn't take too long. Work, education, training on both of them, I had to complete that. Petitioner information, that's all the information about me, my home of record, my contact information, so forth and so on. Then there was a section on security and background information. Of course, you know, a background check is a part of all that process. And then the last section of that form is where you actually request if you want them to have a Social Security card if the application is eventually approved and they get their visa. So I completed that as well. And then the very, very, very final section is a signature page. And then there's going to be some pages of that form that don't apply for whatever reason, like maybe you're doing this yourself, but there is sections in there for if you have like a third party complete the form, and then there's the sections for them to sign and so forth. Obviously all that's left blank if you're doing it yourself. When you do scan and upload that form, you have to include all of those pages. Even the ones that are completely blank, they want it all. So I found that out the hard way, and save yourself a little time. Okay, so all that occurred in August of 2022, and I also went in and immediately paid the fees when I was doing the application. There's another set of fees. Those fees are an immigrant application processing fee. That's $325 each. And then there's an affidavit of support fee, because there's a section in there that as the petitioner I have to prove that I'm financially capable of taking care of the people that I'm petitioning for a visa. That's $120 each. So that would be $650 for the immigrant application fee for my wife and stepson, and $240 for the affidavit of support fee. So that right there is right at $900, little under $900. Plus you take the initial $535 times 2. That's going to be close to $2,000, if not over $2,000. So that's what it cost me for this process, and we're not done. There is another fee that will have to be paid. That'll be in the second part of this vlog. This vlog is going to be 2 parts because it's a lot of information. In the second part, I'll detail that very last fee that we have to pay. So all in all, this is going to be almost a $2,500 US dollar process to do this legally. I've always said it would have been cheaper to fly her into Mexico and just walk across, teach her a little Spanish, walk her across the border. But Anyway, I'm very much a law guy. I believe in following my country's laws, and that's what we're doing. As painful as it can be. So fast forward then on to when we finally got something. And that is from August of 2022 to 25 November. So August, September, October, November. It's about 4 months. And what happened during that 4 months, it wasn't like USCIS where I submitted everything and we just sat there for a year and got nothing, heard nothing. NVC, what they would do is they ask for certain things to be uploaded, and all of that's listed. There's certain documents that are mandatory to be uploaded. And one little hint about the uploading: when you do upload and you attach your document, be sure there's one last step. You have to hit the submit button. If you don't, it's gonna show up as having been uploaded, but it won't have been submitted, and so it's just going to sit there in limbo and nobody's going to look at it. So you got to do that. Make sure once you upload something, select what you're uploading, be sure and hit that submit button, and then make sure it does say submitted. That way you know for a fact somebody's going to be able to see it on the other end. So what happened with me is there was some back and forth. When I initially uploaded the DS-260, I didn't include those blank pages, so they sent me a message. There's an internal messaging system in this website saying, we want all the pages. So I redid all that. Then they wanted a copy of a divorce decree from my very first a marriage from 30 years ago. So I uploaded all of that. And the problem was every time they would ask for something, I would immediately, within a 24-hour period, I would upload it into the system. But then it would take them a month before they actually did anything with it. So we rocked along like that for 4 months. They would ask for something, I'd upload it, send it. A month later, I'd get another request for something, some other document. I'd upload it immediately. A month later, I'd get another request. So that went on. It happened 3 or 4 times to me. Supposedly the idea behind this is that NVC makes sure that all the documentation that you need for the immigration official at the embassy that's going to be doing your interview to be able to make their decision. Turns out that's not exactly true. So you'll see later. So 25 November, we got a message from NVC saying the case was approved. Again, no benefit yet. All that means is that they are then going to send it through to the embassy. So that's the point when it was going to be making its way to the embassy. That must be a pretty slow process, which you would think with it electronically it wouldn't be, but it was 2 months before we got anything from the embassy here in the Philippines. On 24 January, almost exactly 2 months later, the embassy messaged me saying that they were posting our case for scheduling. We waited for about a month. We did continually go in and check the embassy website to see, or check NVC to see if it once it hits ready status, then you're able to go in and actually schedule your appointment. We did that a few months actually before we were notified that it was ready for scheduling. So I mean, a few days. So we saved 3 or 4 days, I think. Jen had gotten some advice from one of our friends, Sharina Wheelock, which is a buddy of mine, Charles's wife, saying just periodically go in and check that status, and once it says ready, then you're able to go in and start scheduling. So we did do that. We got that email saying it was ready to schedule on 25 February. So probably around the 21st, I guess, of February, we were able to actually go in and start the process of getting scheduled for her interview. I'm going to leave it right there, and because I want to do a second part to this, because the second part is pretty detailed in itself. It doesn't cover an extensive amount of time like this first part did, almost 2-year period, but The time period's shorter, but it has a lot of information. We did a lot during that time, and there's just a lot of details. So again, I want to break it up into 2 portions and kind of get this one uploaded, and a couple days later we'll upload part 2, and that should give you a pretty good complete picture of what our experience was, what our journey I love that term, what our journey was through the I-130 process for my spouse and my stepson. The good, the bad, the Philippines.